talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your history as an artist. Your love of the visual arts really goes back quite a long time, doesn't
Well, my name is Benedetto. In Italian, of course, that's the blessed one. In translation, the blessed one. And I, it didn't hit me when I was a youngster. I didn't even like my name. I said, why did I have a name like that? But now I just realize what a wonderful name to have. Leave it up to the Italians to come up with something like that. I think it's just so optimistic and positive. And but I've been blessed with the fact that I've always known what I wanted to do. I never had to say, like so many of my friends or some people that I respect that are very, very educated, where they just say, well, I have all this knowledge now. What should I do with it? And I feel their discomfort and they're kind of cursed with the fact that they have a great education, but they don't know appreciation for things, but they don't know what to do with it, all this knowledge. But I've always known what I wanted to do. I always wanted to sing and paint. I always say it's not that I wanted to do it, I had to do it. And I still feel that way. I'm even more passionate today with that feeling. I feel that I have to keep learning and keep.
still have the curiosity that
Yes.
Picasso talked about?
Exactly.
The child.
Yeah. It's still going. It's even stronger now.
And I think it's amazing. You've been studying painting for a long time, and now you're an accomplished painter, but you're still studying.
Oh yes. You never. The famous the teacher's line in art, where they say it's not the arrival, it's the journey. And that's how I feel. I mean, you never get it. You just go for it, but you just keep learning more and more.
Do you remember the moment when you were a kid where you really had great satisfaction on a work of art that you had done? Is there a moment like that?
Well, only by the reaction of my family, who there was a lot of relatives and a lot of people that we all grew up during the Depression, and so everybody was busy, but we were all together, helping one another out. And every once in a while, someone would stop and see what I was doing, and it was their reaction. It was my family's reaction. All my relatives, my close family, of course, my mom and my brother and sister, and then my aunts and cousins and uncles, and they would see, like if I did a sketch of my grandfather, they'd say. My grandfather was kind of a guru type guy. He was very silent, but he was just wonderful, and I used to love to hang out with him. And he would always tell me, "Don't paint me," But he would secretly, I could tell out of the corner of his eye, he was enjoying it, even though he acted like he didn't like it, But he wanted to be left alone. But he really admired, and the reaction of the sketch that I would do on my grandfather. They would just say, "God, look what he's doing," And it was always someone's acceptance of me that would excite me and tell me that God, this is what I should do, because they're saying yes to this.
And then in high school, you also were encouraged by teachers.
Well, there's a wonderful story that Kinsler, who's now my mentor and the greatest portrait painter of America, Sid Sargent. And when I told him, I tried to get into music and art when I got out of junior high school and got turned down. And I said I always regretted that, because I ended up in an industrial art school that Roosevelt and LaGuardia set up to just give young people work, let them find themselves. It was just an industrial school, that taught you stained glass windows and photography and fashion and cartooning. But I always regretted that. When I was young, I thought, wow, I could have been a great artist. Like the Waterfront movie with Marlon Brando. I could have been a contender, So I regretted that I wasn't a music and art. And it was Everett that finally said to me, he said, I had a scholarship at music and art. And I went there when I was 16. And the teacher said it was just the beginning of modern art as we know it today. And the teacher said to him, don't worry about technique, just paint what you feel. And he was intelligent enough to just close his book. And he left the school and went to the industrial school.
Where you were.
Yeah. And because he said, I'm 16 years old, I don't feel anything yet.
He wanted discipline, which is what you were learning.
Technique. He wanted the methods of how to do it properly.
Right.
So it's like free form, you have to learn form before you become free.
Right.
And so he was intelligent enough, even at an early age, he says, I don't feel anything yet. Right. He said, I want to learn how to do this. And he left and actually went to the industrial school. And that changed me. I mean, this was many years later,
right.
At least 15 years ago, and it changed my whole psyche. I said, God, I really did have a great art education because I learned. And to this day, I mean, like the Kentucky Derby, they just commissioned me to do posters for them for this May. And, I apply the commercial art technique that I learned in the school. And whatever comes up, I mean, I still remember the rudiments of photography or whatever else composition and all that they taught us.
I was going to ask you about the topic of composition. Do you find that right now it's more an intuitive type of thing, or do you really plan these out? For example, the Italian landscapes that we love so much, mm-hmm. They're just so well organized. Is it just intuitive, or?
I think it is. It's a lifetime of experience, and yet there's a lot of. I feel that I have a sense of knowing when it's right. That's the only way I could put it. And yet, of course, I see other artists that I respect an awful lot, and it's amazing how their compositions look. That it has to be. It's all about composition, and it's all about. But like the Robert Henri book, about the art spirit, you have to wait for a moment when it's just right. If you see the light on something and you just say, God, and you're moved emotionally by it, you see something that turns out very beautiful to you. It's exciting. You say, God, I've got to paint this. And then you have to retain that moment that you see that, And it's that study, it's always a challenge, because you'll start a portrait of a person and you'll see a certain mood that they're in. And as the model is there, the model changes. All different moods, thoughts happen to the person, attitudes while you're painting. And you have to retain that one thing that you saw.
So that translates to the landscape as well, then.
Oh, absolutely.
The idea that it's changing, and so you have to grab at one.
Yeah, there's a light that hits it. Like out here in Central Park, I'm fortunate to have this beautiful view of nature in front of me. And someday the clouds come by, and they create these wonderful incongruous shadows over the leaves and the trees, and it's the light and the contrast of the dark shadows of the trees and light and dark because of the clouds. Now that's very passing because the clouds fly by, and you have to retain that wonderful thing that you see.
I remember one of the really nice experiences was the two of us walking through a Sargent exhibition. How much you love Sargent's work. What is it about Sargent that appeals to you so much?
Well, I just think he had this wonderful gift. I mean, he just had the greatest eye. He didn't miss anything. I mean, I'm always amazed in his very intimate landscapes of rocks, and it's in a stream. They're all very accurate. And he paints each rock like they're part of him. You know, he makes sure that nothing is, and then his tremendous compositions. There's one thing I still remember of a scene in the far off distance. There are little sheep in the landscape, and they're just little white dots. When you first look at it, you say, "Oh, there's sheep up on that hill." When you look at it, when you get up close, you can't believe it. They're just little tiny marks. But it's just the way you could actually see the whole thing, you know, give that whole sense of distance.
You seem also to be able to move between oil and watercolor. You seem to be at ease with both. Typical of him as well.
Well, I mean, I've always just wanted to, you know, become a good draftsman, and also paint in watercolor and oil, and I really like that. I like those three.
Tony, when you begin a painting, do you do a preliminary drawing first? Do you just begin to paint?
I do. Sometimes to catch that one moment like that you see that's very exciting with the light. I'll take a photograph of it also, right. And to dramatize it, a lot of time I'll take it in black and white, just to show the values and where they're at. But usually when you plan out a sketch and you see that it's right.
Maybe a work of art, an effective work of art, really attacks all of our senses, and we actually can. And I remember a comment that you made once, that when you're painting, you can, you know, you're thinking about your music, and sometimes when you're on the stage, you're actually thinking about your painting, and maybe that there is a mixing of the.
But what happens is when I'm just starting to learn, because you know, most teachers will just say to you, just paint, you know, just keep painting, just, you know, and that's very good advice. The more you just, you know, the more you just get committed to painting, you know, whatever you do, whether you sketch or whatever, the fact that you just hold those brushes in your hands all day long, you know, until something happens.
But there's certain melodies, there's certain musical melodies. Do they appear?
What happens is it becomes. I found a wonderful inroad because of the Art Spirit book that explains that you finally arrive at just being autobiographical with your work. And I was wondering why like everybody said, I like your New York cabs. You know, I said, you know, that was just one series I did. You know, I said, I wonder why. And then I just realized they all know that I live in New York, and right away they're attached to it because they say this is what he's about. This is what he's a New Yorker, and that's what he sees. You know. And I respect the public's admiration for painters. I mean, a lot of people still think that the public, advertisers usually, you know, look at the public like they're down here somewhere and they're way up above the public's taste. But as a performer, I know that instinctively the public really knows what they like and that really gravitates to it. Not when the public is manipulated and say, this is what the new fashion is, so you got to buy this immediately. Not that. But if they see a good performer on the stage, and I remember when I was a child, just when the performer would walk out, when he was announced, you could tell by his body language, just when he walked out, whether the act was good or not, before he even said a word on the stage. It's funny. You could see it right away, whether someone was a comic or someone was a singer. You could see the way they just walked out. This is going to be good, and that's how quick the public is accepting something. Or they're either bored or they're not, and so you end up. I'm finding out that now my journey is to just do what I'm about. You know, I'm going to start painting jazz artists. I grew up in the small clubs, and had great admiration for tremendous artists. So I'll be painting them a lot, and the fact that I journey so much and I travel all over the world. These are just examples of my attitude towards the things that I see.
The Italian landscapes are special, as far as I'm concerned. There's something about them that is magical. Is there something about that land? Is there something about the sun there that appeals to you? Can you put your finger on it?
Yeah, the Italians are music and art. It's all music and art. You go to any section of Italy, and each section is so gorgeous and different from the other section that it's astounding. The whole area is astounding, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life going there every year, and the joy of just painting there is unbelievable for me. The atmosphere is, I mean, the Tuscany landscape. You know, the atmosphere. You're surrounded by olive trees and cypress trees and beautiful, beautiful perfume there of the wine. The air is perfumed with centuries of wine making.
Stimulating.
Yeah, the people's philosophy is wonderful. I like the Italian people very much. I like their philosophy. They're very alive, you know.